Arc 5 of Wizard 101 is coming up faster than you can say. Somehow Malister returned. And with that, I have a couple theories on what's going to happen. Wiz has always been weirdly good at creating villains, and I think this time around is going to be absolutely no exception to that. If you'll recall, at the end of Selenopolis, it was revealed that we are not the only Earthborn in the spiral anymore, and that is kind of insane. Throughout the entirety of Wizard 101's history as a game, Earth has been irrelevant, to say the least. It was pretty much just used as a device to allow people to explain things to you that wouldn't make sense for them to explain to you if you were a spiral native. Later on, after they redid the intro to the whole entire damn game, it is framed in a more mythic sense. It's kind of just there as like, oh yeah, you were summoned from another world because you're special. And I don't know how much any of us have really thought about it other than like, hey, isn't this kind of weird? But now it seems to have sudden relevance. So before I get into my frankly insane theories about Arc 5, let's get into what thematically being Earthborn does for us as a main character. First of all, ease of accessibility. This is a children's game. It will be easier for a child to connect with their player character if they frankly come from a background similar to them, right? They can just imagine that their player character is a kid just like them, or that their player character just is them. That's easy. But secondly, and something more interesting, is the idea of portal fantasy. And I am specifically talking about, like, kid in the closet portal fantasy, not isekai, I got hit by a truck. So something to remember going forward is that Wizard 101 was still designed for kids. I know that the entire player base is probably adults by now and that the actual children are playing Fortnite. They're still writing this as if it is a children's story, so let's keep that in mind going forward. Now, I promise this is relevant. Portal fantasy. What is portal fantasy when it comes to children's literature? Well, it is typically about a child who does not like their current real-world circumstances for whatever reason. They're bored, their parents aren't paying attention to them, etc., 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 middle school problems. Who knows, right? But they find a portal, or they are transported through some method and means to another world. And that other world is magical and fantastical, maybe a little bit cartoonish at times, and it does not believe in the idea of child safety. No, does that sound familiar? Because it should, because that is the premise of Wizard 101. The whole point of portal fantasy when it comes to children's literature is to teach the child something, right? It is to reflect problems that the child might see in their real life and kind of give them a little bit of a heads up on how to deal with it. I have seen some other people say, the trope can also be used as a way to sort of teach the kids like gratitude, because they learn that the magical otherworld isn't as great as they thought, it's dangerous, and they return home all the more grateful. There's other nuances too, like it's a metaphor for escapism and maturing, but by and large, that is the premise of portal fantasy. Here's where it gets weird. Wiz is not following that really anymore. Okay, well, that's not entirely accurate, right? Every single villain that we've sort of seen has been a metaphor. I'll walk through them very, very quickly. Malister, obviously a metaphor for grief. One could argue he was a metaphor for, something awful happening and suddenly someone that you trusted is no longer safe. Morgana's obviously very simple. Don't let power corrupt you. Be careful who you trust. I think Morgana's is a really great villain, and I could talk about many ways to read her character, but that is for another video. Grandfather Spider and Raven, I think that's a little bit less obvious and straightforward. Spider and Raven, I would say, are largely and broadly about balance and coming to reconciliation. I think that's really what that arc is. What's interesting about Arc 4 is that it doesn't really have, like, a central villain. The old one kind of is the villain, but he dies very early on in the narrative, and it's more a character study of him in a strange way. I guess you could argue the spiral powers are sort of the villains. But I think Define's arc is really about not knowing who you are and how that's pretty much just fine because nobody does, which is definitely more complex than the other arcs. So I would argue that thematically the villains and their themes get broader as the story goes on, which is strange because as the game continues, the quests do seem to get more and more cartoonish and silly. I talked about that the last time I went on about Wizard 101's narrative. I don't need to repeat it here. We do have a couple hints for what Arc 5 is going to be. We obviously know who the villain is, and we do know that the hint that we've gotten so far is personal. Just the word personal. Before I get into like my actual theories, I do want to preface this by saying that this is less textual evidence based and more like what I think will happen based on what the game has thematically shown me. So, theory 1. Khonsu stated at the end of Selenopolis that the spiral was either a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be plundered. So basically, during our prologue, we already have this idea in our heads of a scientist, someone who is coming in coldly and clinically. Now, I came up with this theory before they dropped the hint of Arc 5 being personal. I'm still kind of wobbling towards it, but only because I feel like it would be very cohesive for them to continue with that scientist cold analysis thread after what they set up with Selenopolis. Tiny note, I'm not going to be considering any information that we've gained from Hero 101 as canon. The game never came out, so therefore it is not publicly available information, and considering what was said about Earth that we know of from the beginning of Wizard 101, it would not make sense for it to be described as a world that does not believe in magic or a world without magic if it had superheroes in it. TLDR, my theories are not going to account for that as evidence of anything. Theory 2 lines up with the hint of personal a little bit better.
I just love that part where
The young wizard
spends the rest of
there
days on this nowhere
spiral
with a bunch of...
furries.
That's right, I heard.
Okay, sorry. Selenopolis was mainly about the friends the young wizard has made along their adventures. It was a reaffirmation that we mattered to the people around us, and those friendships didn't just end when we leveled up. Clearly, we're much more than just a weapon. Mallory herself states at the end of Selenopolis that we will always have our friends. But that being said, time has clearly passed. People are aging, getting jobs, etc., etc. It's never clearly stated how much time passes in between arcs or whatever, and the developers have kind of stated they want to keep that blurry, at least they did years ago. Which leads us to the question of what happened to our friends on Earth. Here's the strange thing. We don't actually know how we got to the spiral. We know Merle summoned us, but we don't know if it was a sudden transportation. We don't know if it was a portal we walked into. We have no idea. Did anyone see us go? Okay, that's mildly existentially terrifying for the furry game, but I'm being serious. We did leave people behind. There has been no implication that we are able to jump back and forth from the spiral to Earth. So what if our enemy, our Earthborn, is someone that we once knew on Earth, someone who feels left behind, someone who wanted to know what happened to us? What if they feel like the spiral has kidnapped us? What if they feel like we replaced them with new, better friends? There's any sort of reason that they could be doing quote-unquote dark work. They could want us to return to Earth. They could not want us to return to Earth. I'm not sure. I don't think that's a call we can necessarily make right now. But it's very possible that this Earthborn is a childhood friend. Okay, next theory. I'm not sure I quite believe this anymore because, again, the hint of personal. However, it's possible that this other Earthborn is like us. They are a child who has fallen into the spiral. Unlike us, however, they believe that this world is a game. They are treating it like a fantasy world because that's what it looks like to them. This is basically meta commentary on the nature of fantasy worlds and portal fantasy and escapism, and considering Design's whole arc was about him being an outsider in the spiral, I'm not sure I believe this one. Seems mildly redundant to have another someone fell into a reality and now they have to figure out how that reality works. Okay, last theory. Khonsu was horrified to learn that Bartleby brought us into the spiral. If divine beings can call out into the wider universe and receive an answer, then what happens when something that is not Bartleby calls out and wants a champion? I'll be real, I'm not actually a fan of this one because it would probably require introducing another cosmic being into the Spiral's pantheon, and I think we're good with the pantheon that we currently have. But yeah, that's basically all of my theories. I will be happy to be proven right or to be proven wrong or to just be simply proven. I am here for the thrill of the chase and nothing else. I did not have a script for this video, if you can't tell. I hope it was enjoyable anyway. And I will see you guys next time. Let me know what you all think is about to happen, because I sure don't.